listen, positioning, in my opinion, this is one of the most powerful tools we have at our disposal as marketing folk. And yet positioning is a deeply, deeply misunderstood topic. So whenever I talk about positioning, I generally have to start by talking about what positioning is not. It is not a tagline. It is not the same thing as messaging. My personal pet peeve is when people talk about brand positioning. It bugs me because we have branding and we have positioning, and those two things, in my opinion, are completely separate. In fact, everything on this slide flows from positioning, but you actually have to have positioning first. You can think of it a bit like this. If everything we do in marketing and sales is the house, positioning is the foundation upon which the house is built. Here's my definition. Positioning defines how your product is the best in the world at delivering some value that a well-defined set of customers cares a lot about. Now that's a mouthful. And when I'm talking to folks, particularly non-marketers that don't have a background in this, the best way to think about it is context setting. Context is kind of how we make sense of the world, particularly things that we're not familiar with or things that we've just encountered for the first time. I'll give you a couple of stupid examples, and then I'm going to give you a good not stupid example. So here's an example of a product I once encountered completely out of context while I was surfing around on the web. And you know what I thought this was? I thought this was a shoe. Yeah. Like I thought, you know how Crocs, they're really into ugly shoes. This is like the geniuses at Crocs sat down and said, how do we make this shoe like times 10 ugly? I know, we'll open up the toe and we'll put this thing at the back and it'll be amazing. And then later I saw the thing in context and I realized, it's not a shoe at all. And it became obvious what the thing was and what it was good for. It's what it is a dog muzzle. What it's good for is embarrassing your dog in public, I guess. Now, because I show you this dog thing, I might show you something else and say, hey, what's this? And because now you're in a dog frame of mind, you may think, oh, that's like, a comb for your dog, after they get surgery or something. And in fact, it's not. It's actually for humans when they're eating noodles or something. But, the marketers here give us a little context. They give us that guy, and that guy tells us what this thing is good for. It's actually for making people fall in love with you. It doesn't work. But anyways, the point here is that a shift in positioning or context can completely change the way we perceive a product. Context is important also because the markets that we operate in are very, very crowded. So one of the ways that we set context is through market categories. I like to show this slide. You're marketers, so you've probably seen this before. Scott Brinkler's marketing technology landscape. This is just like what this slide is like, imagine all the software and all the land to solve any problem. This is one guy's attempt to model just one tiny corner of that universe, just to the software that solves marketing problems. Look at that thing. It's horrifying. There's 8,000 products on there. How would I ever figure out what to pay attention here if I wanted to buy some marketing tech stuff? Now you can see market categories are one way to kind of help make sense of this. So you can see Scott's broken this up by macro categories and micro categories. Macro ones are the colors, like red is advertising and promotion, and orange is content and experience. And then inside there's these little islands, and the islands represent the micro category. So let's say I wake up in the morning and I decide, you know what, I want chat on my site, like chat bot on my site. And so I look at this and, oh man, that sounds maybe like social and relationships. And I squint in there and, oh yeah, there's a little island on there. It's called conversational marketing and chat. Great. Now I don't have to pay attention to all 8,000 things. I only have to pay attention to like, okay, it's still way too many, to be honest, but at least it ain't 8,000. But that's not all positioning my product in a market category does. It narrows down the competition, sure, but what it actually does is it sets off a really powerful set of assumptions in the minds of customers about what my product is all about. It works a bit like this. Let's say, you ever get this show where people come in and it's like a pitch contest and they pitch their product? It's like Dragon's Den in the US, or no, Dragon's Den in the UK and Canada, and Shark Tank in the US. You ever watch it? Anyways, let's say I'm going in and I got to pitch my product and all I'm allowed to say is the market category and that's it. So I walk in, I'm like, hey, I'm here to pitch you my revolutionary next generation, modern, it's so way cool CRM, customer relationship management. That's it. You don't get anything else. Who's my competition? It's Salesforce, right? They're the leader in that market. Salesforce, that's my competitor. Name me 3 features that you think this product would have. Tracking accounts, tracking deals, tracking a funnel, CRM stuff, right? What's the title of the person I sell this thing to? It's the head of sales, VP sales, sales manager. That's who buys the CRM. Now, here's where it gets crazy. What's the price? Now, how would you know that? I didn't tell you anything about this product. But if you assume that my competition is Salesforce, they're the leader in that market, I'm not going to charge more than that, am I? So here's how this works. If I do a good job and I position my product in a market category such that it sets off a set of assumptions about my product, and those assumptions are true, great. I just save marketing and sales a whole lot of hassle. I don't have to tell you who my competition is. It's assumed. I don't have to list every single feature. Half of that stuff is table stakes. Unfortunately, it works the same way if I do a terrible job of it. So let's say I position myself in a market category. It sets off a set of assumptions about my product that are not true. Now, marketing and sales have got their work cut out for them, undoing the damage that my positioning has already done. Let me give you an example. So this is a company old boss of mine, now he's a VC, calls me up. He says, hey, I just invested in this company and they're great. And part of the reason I invested in them is their customers love them. But here's the problem. When they first start having a conversation with customers, nobody can figure out what the heck it is. I think they've got a positioning problem. Can you help? I'm like, yeah, maybe. Get them on the phone. And I'm like, okay, what's your story? And they say, well, we're lawyers, ex-lawyers, and we decided we're going to build this thing and it's email for lawyers. And I was like, email for lawyers. Who knew the lawyers needed their own email? But I'm not a lawyer. Thank God. What do I know about lawyering? That's fine. Email for lawyers. Great. So then they go into the demo and they show me this thing and it's cool. It's like an inbox and the lawyers are having a conversation with their clients in here. And I'm like, hey, how does the calendar work on this email for lawyers? And the guy says, oh, we don't have a calendar. And I'm like, what? Wait, how do you replace Outlook or Gmail if you don't have a calendar? He's like, we don't even compete with them. And I'm like, oh, so you're telling me that lawyers need 2 emails? How's that going to work? And then I'm like, wait, back it up. Your investor says customers love you. Why do they love you so much? And they said, well, we actually have this thing. We have a patent on it. It's pretty cool technology. What it does is you got the lawyers, you got their clients, they're collaborating on documents and contracts and things. So what this thing does is it uses some AI magic. It looks at that and it gives access to whoever needs to get access to the documents, puts it in a super secure place. Only the people that are allowed to get access to it. Nobody else can get it. That actually sounds kind of cool. Sounds neat. I could see how the lawyers would get excited about it. But you know what? It's not email. If I wanted to solve that problem, would I buy email to do that? I don't think so. So what these guys actually have is a really neat, innovative, amazing product masquerading as kind of crappy email. Now, what if I took that same product and I picked it up and I positioned it in a completely different market category? Maybe the assumptions would be different. What if I said, hey, it's not email, it's team collaboration for lawyers? Now that's different. Now I'm not competing with Gmail and Outlook anymore, am I? Now I'm competing with Slack, right? Or Microsoft Teams, something like that. And hey, what do I expect there to be in terms of features? Well, I don't expect it to have a calendar anymore, do I? I solved that problem. What do I expect it to do? I expect it to have some cool collaboration stuff like super secure context-aware file sharing, and that's exactly what they've got. Fringe benefit of this one, they always had a problem with the pricing when they were positioned as email because people are used to not paying too much for email. Position as team collaboration, we're used to paying more for that. Put the price way up, way more leads in the pipeline. Works like magic. Here's another example. This is a company I worked with a long time ago, but I love these guys. They're called ClearPath Robotics, founded by two guys with advanced degrees in mechatronics engineering. They're robot guys. They started a startup making robots. Specifically, what their robots do is they drive around a manufacturing plant and they deliver things from one place to the other. Now, I don't know if you're like me, maybe you don't know too much about robots. Maybe that doesn't sound hard. Turns out that thing is a miracle of modern technology. It's full of mapping and sensors and artificial intelligence. It's amazing. So they go to sell this thing. They get a meeting with the person inside the manufacturing plant that's in charge of buying robots. And they show up and say, hello, we are ClearPath Robotics. And we are here to sell you our fancy new robot. And do you know what the buyer says? The buyer goes, ugh, robots. Yeah, man. We've been buying robots for decades. It's so long. We have approved robot vendors. And by the way, you're not one of them. We know what robots cost. And your robot here seems like it's pretty expensive. And the folks from ClearPath are like, no, you don't understand. It's a special robot, special robots, unlike any robots you've ever seen before. So after a while, they get this idea. You know what? Maybe positioning this thing as a robot isn't actually doing us any favors. So they took a step back and they said, look, what's so special about us? It's mobility, drives around. It's mapping, sensors, artificial intelligence. What market could we position this in that all of that stuff would be obvious and it would be obviously differentiated from their traditional idea of robot? And eventually they get this idea that, what we actually have here is a self-driving car, or what they actually call it, autonomous vehicles for industrial uses. But that totally changes the conversation with the client. Then they come in, hey, we're doing autonomous vehicles for industrial uses. Well, of course it drives around. Of course it's got mapping and sensors and artificial intelligence. That's what we know about self-driving cars. Of course, I don't buy it from the same vendor that picks up a roll of tape and puts it in a box. Of course, that thing's going to cost more money. Everything works better when the positioning is stronger. Now, marketers, some of you, I suspect, are having this thought in your head right now. And that thought is, hey, April, this sounds great, but this isn't exactly my job. Like, I don't get to decide whether we're email or team collaboration or whether or not this thing is a robot. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to do the SEO and make content and be excellent at marketing tactical execution. I don't get to make these decisions. And I hear you. I get you. In fact, I was exactly like you when I started my career. My idea was I needed to be excellent at execution, right? People say, build the content. I'm building the content. I'm building great content. It's amazing. And here's my technical diagram that shows how I thought this worked. You give me whatever you got. And maybe that stuff is good and maybe it's not so good. And I apply my marketing tactical genius to it. And out the other end comes the sparkly unicorns and stuff. And the first job I had, this actually worked pretty good. We had very good positioning. The product was good. There was a lot of demand for it. We did an excellent job on the marketing team. Everything was up and to the right. We were all great. Then I went to the second company, and you know what? In the second company, the positioning was not so good. And so what we had instead was a very capable team of people doing excellent, perfect, in fact, marketing execution, but we weren't getting the sparkly unicorns that we thought we were going to get because, we're email for lawyers or I'm a robot and nobody wants that. And so instead of it looking like this, what was actually happening was, the poo was coming into the system and we were working like heck, shining it up and making everything perfect. And then we got out the other end was just slightly more sparkly poo. And at that point, I realized, you know what? I didn't sign up for that. I don't want to spend my day polishing the stuff. That's not what I'm here to do. What I want to do is I want to get a promotion. I want to be the VP marketing. I want to be the CMO. I want to get invited to the board meeting. Polypoo Polisher does not get invited to the board meeting. So even if it's not your job, even if your boss says, don't worry about that, that's not your thing to worry about, it is your thing to worry about because if you don't fix this, you can't do your genius work. So even if nobody wants you to do it, if you understand that the positioning is weak, you're going to have to agitate to get it fixed. Now, if you're smart and you know that the positioning is weak and you're hassling people and you're like, hey, maybe we need to check in on this. Maybe we need to figure out how to make this stronger. You know, the first question you're going to get back? Okay, smart guy, how do you do it? Ah, now we're getting into the hard stuff. So when I started out in marketing, I thought, well, we must have an accepted way of doing positioning, right? It's not like a new concept. We've been doing this for ages, so there must be a way to do it. So I go to marketing school, and this is what I learned in marketing school. Marketing school, when you get to the module on positioning, they're like, hey, this is how you do this. It's a positioning statement. So the positioning statement is this Mad Libs fill in the blanks kind of a thing. And it looks kind of like this. And it's like your product is a blank that does blank, unlike blank and blankety blank blank. And you're filling in things like, here's my competitor and here's my benefit and blah, blah, blah. So the first time I came across this, I was taking a course, postgrad course at a university. And I had just repositioned a product that we thought was desktop productivity software. And it was a stinker. Nobody wanted to buy it. And we repositioned it as an embeddable database for mobile devices, pretty different market category. And then it took off. So I'm looking at this thing and I'm saying, okay, there's a blank there and it says market category. But as far as I can see, any product can be positioned in multiple different market categories. So how do I know what the best one is to write in the blank? So I'm sitting at the back. I put my hand up. I'm like, Professor, how do we know, how do we know which one's the right one to put in there? And you know what the guy said to me? He said, trust me, April, you'll just know. And that's how really smart people say, I don't have a clue, man. So at that point, I was like, we don't actually know how to do this. So at that point, I had repositioned a handful of products. So I thought, well, maybe we can figure this out if we sat down and logicked it out. So here's how I did it. So the first thing is I thought, well, we'll solve this like we solve a lot of problems in life. We're going to break the positioning down into component pieces, solve for the component pieces, and then smash them together. Voila, good positioning. So breaking it into pieces actually wasn't all that hard because it turns out we agree on what the component pieces are positioning are. They're these 5 things. The first one is competitive alternatives. If you didn't exist, what would a customer do instead? Second one is unique attributes or features, capabilities. What do you got that the capabilities wise that the alternatives don't have? Next one is value. So people don't care that much about features. They care what your features can do for them. So what value can you deliver for customers that the other guys can't? The next one is customer segmentation, or who's your best fit customer? Because we're not marketing this to everybody. We're marketing it to the folks that really like it and are a good fit for it. And the last one is market category, which we just talked about. That's the context. So, okay, I got these 5 things. All I got to do is figure out how to find the best answer for each, put it together. Voila, we got it. Now, the first thing you'll see when you look at that and approach it that way is that part of what makes this complicated is that all of the component pieces has a relationship to the others. So if I take anything on this chart, let's take value. The differentiated value that my product can deliver for customers is completely dependent on what? My differentiated capabilities. And that's the only place it comes from. So those 2 things, I can't figure out one without figuring out the other. And then when you talk about differentiated capabilities, unique attributes, they're only differentiated or unique when I compare them to a competitor. So those 3 things are tied together, actually. I can't figure them out independently. When I talk about my best fit customer, well, my best fit customer, by definition, these are the customers that care a lot about my value. So I can't figure out one without the other there. And market category is a little bit more esoteric. But if you think about it, if I think about market category like context, the best market category is the best context I can position my product in such that this value is obvious to these people I'm trying to go after. So I can't figure out my best market category without knowing value and customer segments. So if everything depends on everything else, where do I start? And for 2 years, and I'm not kidding, for 2 years, I decided there was no good starting point here. We actually picked something. Usually we'd start with features because that's easy, work my way around the circle, come up with candidate positioning. We go out in the market, we test it. If it works, great, we run with it. If it doesn't, we throw it out and we try it again. And that works great as long as you get a good one the first try. If you don't get a good one the first try, then you're the vice president of marketing. You're mucking around with this. You're 3 months into the job. Your CEO is like, TikTok, April, when are we going to figure out that positioning thing? And I'm like, I need to do another iteration on this. So this was bad. How I solved this is a really long story that I don't have time to tell. But the short version of it is I got really into Clayton Christensen, and I started reading a lot about jobs to be done. And I had an epiphany that led me to this, which basically what I learned from reading Christensen is if I do not start with competitive alternatives, I will end up with positioning that sounds good in the office, but it doesn't sell in the market because it is not sufficiently differentiated from the other options that my customers have. So it actually has to go this way. I start with competitive alternatives. If I didn't exist, what would a customer do? That's my stake in the ground. I got to beat this in order to win a deal. Then I say, okay, what have I got that they don't have? They fill a whiteboard with this stuff, all kinds of features, amazing. I got all kinds of them. Then what I can do is I can map those features to value. So for every one of those features, I go down to the list and I say, so what? So what for a customer? Why does a customer care about this feature? And then once I've got my differentiated value, then I can say, well, look, I can sell this product to anybody that needs something kind of like this, but not everybody cares about it the same. So what are the characteristics of a target account that make them a really, really good fit for my product? That's going to get me my segmentation or my best fit customers. Once I have that, then I can lean back and say, all right, I got this value. I'm trying to communicate it to these people. What am I? Am I a robot or am I a self-driving car? So this is how you do it. There's a lot of ways to screw this up, to be honest. It sounds easy. It's not that easy. The most common way to screw it up is the first step, which is competitive alternatives. If you go and ask your sales rep, who do we compete with? You know what they're going to tell you? They're going to tell you the last company they lost a deal to. And if you tell them, what do you lose the most deals to? They'll say, oh, it's this competitor. But then if I say, well, how many deals do we lose to no decision? You look at that in B2B, on average, we lose 35 to 40% of our deals to no decision. And you know what that means? That means you lost to Excel. That means you lost to the intern. That means you lost to manual processes. If you don't think of those as competitors, you're not going to be positioned against them strongly enough to make sure that those deals actually move forward. Anyways, if you're interested in this stuff, you can go way down the rat hole. I wrote a whole book on this stuff, which is everything I know about positioning in a book. I'm going to do one story at the end and then we're going to quit. Here's the last story. I like this one. I tell it all the time. So if you ever heard me talk before, you probably heard me tell a story, but I don't care because I like to tell it. So I'm going to tell it again. A long time ago, this was quite a long time ago, I worked for a company in the CRM space, and we were positioning ourselves as enterprise CRM. Now, at that point, Salesforce was around, but people don't remember this. They were selling just into the SMB part of the market. So just very, very small companies. And so there was a big company in the space at the time called Siebel, and they were like the absolute kings of enterprise CRM, giant company, publicly traded, amazing, growing really fast. We were also positioning ourselves as enterprise CRM, which is a really dumb way to position because, every time we get in a meeting with a customer, they'd say, oh, you're enterprise CRM, so how are you better than Siebel? And the answer to that question was, we kind of weren't. Like in every possible way, they were better than us. Like they had 8,000 employees. I was like employee 22. They had 400 customers. We had 5 or 6. They had 2 billion revenue. We were doing about 1.2, 1.3 million. But we did have a feature that was really different from them. And so we always talked about it. And it was a way of modeling relationships in a different way. It looked really good in a demo, so we always demoed it. The problem was we didn't, so we knew who our competitor was. We knew who our differentiated capabilities were. We never did the actual translation to value. So when we walked in and we'd say, hey, we got this feature, it's amazing, and a customer would look at it and go, hey, that looks good, that thing. What do you use it for? And we'd say, anything you want. And then they would look confused. And then we'd get to the other thing that we had in our back pocket, which was we were so desperate to do a deal, we would just discount the heck out of everything. And occasionally we'd win a deal on price. This is not a good way to position, by the way. So that went along, needless to say, we're not selling a lot. And how we got out of this was we actually hired a new sales rep. And the sales rep came into the interview, and he was from New York, and he had a lot of ego. And he came in, and my CEO said, "Give us one good reason why we should hire you to be a sales rep at our company." And he said, "I'll give you one good reason, because my buddy is the head of investment banking at Goldman Sachs, and I can get you a meeting." And we were like, "You're hired." And so we hired the guy, and we got the meeting at Goldman Sachs, and I went along because I wanted to see what the office of the head of investment banking at Goldman Sachs looks like. It's very, very big. It has a helicopter pad outside. That's actually true. Anyways, we go into the meeting. My rep's great. He does the demo. He's fantastic. He gets to show our special feature, and the guy goes nuts. He's like, "What? Wait, back up. Are you saying if two people sit on a board together, but they don't work at the same company, you can model that?" And we're like, "Yeah." He's like, "What? This is amazing." He runs down the hall. He gets two guys that work with him. They come back. They're asking the same questions. Everybody's all excited, jumping up and down. We close the deal. Yay. We're excited. We're like, "Hey, maybe investment bankers love our stuff. We should try this with another investment bank." So we go up and down Wall Street. We get a meeting with Merrill Lynch. We go in, the exact same thing happens. We show this feature. Everybody gets all excited. We close a deal. Turns out the value of our feature is actually super valuable if you're doing a very high touch, relationship driven sell. There's a thing in investment banking called reason to call. We facilitated that. Okay, now we get the value. So things are looking good. Importantly, what happened was it drove a discussion back in the office about our positioning. Are we really enterprise CRM, or are we CRM for investment banks? And the way I reasoned it was, if we positioned as CRM for investment banks, there was a lot of value in that. Like, the investment banks might actually find us, and it'd be easier to get on a short list. But you know who really didn't like that? Our investors. Our investors were like, "Look, we didn't write you a big check to be some niche play. Like, how many investment banks are there? Like, you're never going to make any money just selling to investment banks." And we convinced them like this. We said, "Look, positioning is not carved in stone. It's going to change as we change, as our product matures. So we're going to start as CRM for investment banking. And then once we've dominated investment banking, we're going to have more features. We're going to go into retail banking. Then we're going to be CRM for banking. Once we figure that out and we're dominating that, then we're going to make a move into insurance. Then we're going to be CRM for financial services. And if we successfully do that, well, we're a giant company at that point. So at that point, we might take a run exactly straight at Siebel, and we'll knock those guys out." Board approved. We did the repositioning, and it was absolutely transformational for the business. The best thing that happened was we never got in a head-to-head with Siebel again. We'd walk in and we'd say, "Hey, we're CRM for investment banking." The bankers would say, "Wait, don't you compete with Siebel?" And we'd say, "Oh, Siebel. We love those guys. They're amazing. So big, so much money. Gosh, they're great. They're like the world's best general purpose CRM for like call centers and retailers and stuff like that. Not you, Wolf of Wall Street. You need something special." We show them the thing. Everybody gets excited. We close the deal. Things went so well. We went from 2 million revenue to 80 million revenue in 18 months. And the end of the story was Siebel got so sick of us kicking their tail all the way up and down Wall Street that they came and acquired us for $1.3 billion. And the board didn't think we were going to make any money. This is the end. I want to leave you with a couple of takeaways. Positioning is like context setting, but you better be careful, because context can kill you. Your genius marketing can't overcome weak positioning. So even if it's not your job and nobody wants you to work on it, you're going to have to figure it out. And then lastly, if you are going to figure it out, you can't just get everybody together in a room and say, "Hey, why does everyone love us?" You're going to actually have to follow a process to get this done.